I'm gonna pay off on this 7 best cities for guitar.
Okay, yeah,
Players.
pay off. Do it, Wes.
Yeah. All right. So put the link in the description. So if you guys want to read it, read the whole thing, you can. It's on this site called GuitaristNextDoor.com. It's a guitar website that I was hired to write a little bit for. Anyway, here we go. So the 7 best cities for guitar players in the U.S. are number 1, Nashville. Not much of a surprise there. So basically, how I came up with this was I looked at the musical reputation of the city, the proportion of music-related occupations, average annual income for guitar players, 1-bedroom median rental price for an apartment, cost of living index, number of small music venues per capita, number of musicians per capita, and approximate number of guitar stores or stores that sell guitars. So I used a bunch of different sources to find all that information. And number 1 was Nashville. You can make a pretty decent living there, and the price for obviously there's tons of venues. Probably that's number 1 for venues. Very close to number 1 for musicians per capita. So Nashville's number 1. Austin, Texas is number 2.
Did you get a number on the average income for guitar players in any of these cities?
Yeah, the average income for guitar players in Nashville is $40,739.
$40,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's like what, $800 a week, $700 a week.
And then the median price of a 1-bedroom apartment is about $1,700. So it's that's one thing that I kind of like. I wanted the list to be like where you could actually go and make a living. So yeah, Nashville is number 1. Number 2 was Austin, Texas. Austin obviously has a ton of venues as well. Not quite as many musicians there. So the reason I put musicians per capita, because that's like, you'll have more bands to play with. You'll have more guitar buddies, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. You get it. So the average income, though, for guitar players in Austin is almost 57 and a half per year. And
So it's more than Nashville?
yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, and the 1-bedroom price is a little bit cheaper. So Austin's a pretty good bet as well.
Wow.
Number 3 is Memphis. So Memphis has quite a few venues, but the annual income for guitar players is $39,455, which is real close to Nashville, but the 1-bedroom apartment rental is only $900 in Memphis. So it's almost half.
What was it in Nashville?
About $1,700.
Good God. Geez.
Yeah. So you're saving a lot of money on rent there. There's not as many musicians though in Memphis, and there's not as many venues, but there's still quite a bit relatively.
Yeah, but there's a lot more stabbings.
LA was I put LA number 4. LA, the reason I put LA is because obviously it costs a lot to live there. $2,400 for a 1-bedroom apartment. You can make $69,000 there. But the cool thing about LA is that you have a really good shot of maybe being discovered there, as opposed to other, which then, if you find a band to play with that goes on a tour, or, you have more, I think, opportunities in LA just because it's such a music-centric city. Although it is very expensive, it's not as expensive as San Francisco, Boston, or New York City. So, and especially since there's so many outskirts areas of LA, you can find a place to live for a little cheaper, and then you still have all the glitz and of Hollywood, and there's tons of recording studios,
Sure.
tons.
and they're dropping out.
Number 5, New Orleans. So New Orleans is you can make 43,000 there, 1,500 for your apartment. There's a lot of musicians there. There's a lot of small venues as well. So they have about as many small venues as Austin. Not quite as many musicians, but still quite a bit. So it's definitely a good place to be a guitar player. And number 6, Minneapolis.
Really, Minneapolis?
Yeah, so a lot of people would be like, "Huh, Minneapolis?" So I put Minneapolis because $1,200 for an apartment, but the average income $60,000. So it's quite a big jump over, say New Orleans, which is at 43. Nashville was at 40. You can go there and make $20,000 more per year. So I don't know. And there's a lot of musicians in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Musicians per capita is 53. So that's pretty close to where Austin sits.
What was it in Nashville?
Nashville is 127. So Nashville blows the competition out of the water.
As far as
Yeah,
how many
LA is 49, which LA being 49 for LA is huge because there's 3.7 million people, at least in the stats that I use, compared to in Memphis 600,000, Austin has about 1 million, Nashville has 700,000. So like for there to be 49 musicians per capita in a 3.7 million person city, that's pretty crazy. But yeah, so I liked Minneapolis a lot because kind of a smaller population, yet it has tons of musicians, and 1-bedroom apartment rental, $1,290. So that's actually pretty reasonable, especially if you're bringing in $60,000. So, and then Pittsburgh was number 7.
Pittsburgh,
exactly. So Pittsburgh also pretty cheap on the apartments. You can also make a pretty good living there, 50,000 or so. Population is a little bit smaller, not as many musicians though, but it definitely has a pretty robust musical history, to be honest. And
Really?
Yeah, and it's kind of just been steadily. It's seen kind of the most growth in the last 20 or so years in terms of that. So yeah, I didn't add. There was some honorable mentions in there. Obviously New York City. The reason I didn't put that is because it's so expensive to live there. Same with Boston and Chicago. There's a lot of venues and a lot of opportunities there, but it's like trying to make with the average income that a guitar player brings and then the rent price, it would be really hard to make that work,
Yeah.
because the income that you're bringing in say New York City is real close to LA, except for apartment is like 3,200. Compared to LA is 24. Seattle just didn't quite have expensive as well. Las Vegas has had a lot of venues, but again, it was pretty low on how much you would actually bring in, which I was surprised by. So
You'd think Vegas would have more venues, but nowadays
it does have a lot of venues for sure. It was, but it was like the amount you could bring in was pretty low, and it just didn't quite. Like I said, it didn't seem very realistic. So anyway, if you want to go, if you want to read this, I put the link in the chat, and it's right there on the homepage. But it's pretty cool. We're hoping now. So we just published this a little while ago, and now we're hoping he just hired some press company to kind of put it out there. So hopefully you'll see it in. On a guitar website or something soon, Guitar World or guitar.com or something
guitar
like that.
website coming near you. Well, that's awesome, Wes.
Yeah.
I can't believe that Pittsburgh was up there.
Yeah,
Really,
Pittsburgh.
So you got to deal with the weather, though, man. God.
Well, Minneapolis.
Yeah, really. Yeah. No,
But I mean, it's the same situation. Then you go down to New Orleans and you're going to sweat your ass off. So what are you going to take,
Yeah.
Meet in the middle in Kansas City. So yeah, anyway, hopefully you guys can check that out and read all about why I picked the ones I picked.
Yeah, that was very good, Wes. That's interesting. So, it'd be interesting to see. Okay, you live in Nashville. Your average income is $40,000, and let's say you work 3 gigs a week or 2 gigs a week. Say that's 100 gigs, right, a year. So that's 400 gigs. That's $400 a gig, right?
Yeah, I think you would be having to do more than 2 gigs a week.
Yeah, you probably would.
I mean, if you're probably doing more like 4.
But they got studios there, and if you're in the studios, man, but not everybody can be in the studio.
All right, and I don't think that your just everyday average Joe guitar player is going to be in the studio because there's so much competition there.
Right, yeah.
Musicians per capita was 127
Yeah.
compared to like down in Memphis, which is like 32. So it's like there's like 4 times as many guitar players there. So I would imagine the average guitar player's gig is like playing on Broadway in one of those
for
honky
tips.
tonks, right?
So when you say per capita, you per 100, per 1,000, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow, that was very interesting.